I'm going to pass over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. You told us just now that I think 27% of pregnant women in Blackpool were smoking during pregnancy. But we know from a study in 2015 that apparently 3/4 of women are drinking during pregnancy, and a third of those at binge levels. And I think the UK is the sort of fourth worst prevalence of this in the world. And if we're really concerned about children's life chances, to me this is a pretty huge issue which we are very far off from the pace from addressing. There was a debate in Parliament on this issue on the 17th of January, and the Times ran a story on it that day and described it as a national emergency. Do you think that's appropriate language for what's happening with fetal alcohol syndrome disorder?
Clearly, I'm very concerned about that. And if you look at our Chief Medical Officer guidelines for low-risk alcohol consumption, you will find that we advise against alcohol in pregnancy. So we are quite clear as CMOs that this is a bad thing to do. And we have explained that with the Royal College of Obstetricians. They absolutely agree too. So our view is clear that to protect these children, and I welcome the fact that as MPs you've been doing quite a lot of work around not just pregnancy but around the children of parents who are alcoholic. In fact, the data's quite interesting, isn't it, that there are fewer people drinking, but there's still quite a lot of binge drinking, and I think it is worrying. And one of the things we debated long and hard as we wrote those guidelines was we didn't want mothers who didn't know they were pregnant and had a binge to feel guilty. We want them to enjoy their pregnancies, yet we do want them to stop when they know they're pregnant. So you're back to how do we persuade the public to drink moderately?
But I don't think the public have really got this, have they? Because it used to be thought that a glass of Guinness a day during pregnancy was good, or maybe even a glass
I
of
don't remember that.
Red wine. Well,
no, I never remember as a doctor
during the debate. But I mean, we know from the University of Bristol and the University of Cardiff study, which came out in November last year, they estimate between 42,000 and 120,000 children a year being born with fetal alcohol syndrome. It's often misdiagnosed or not diagnosed at all. Canada estimates half their prison population is affected, and in the UK, the all-party group had evidence that between a quarter and 30% of children in care in the UK are affected by this. So I am really underwhelmed by what we are doing as a country to grasp this issue. In particular, I'd like your views on what you think pubs, restaurants and supermarkets should do, and I'd like in a little while you to say something about the new labelling guidelines due to come in September, because frankly I think we are asleep at the wheel on this, and if we actually genuinely care about children's life chances, these are children whose life chances have been taken away before they're born, because this is often permanent brain damage that can last a lifetime.
It is permanent brain damage, whether mild, moderate or severe. I absolutely agree with you. So we as CMOs have asked the drinks industry to put labelling on everything. We have had a number of run-ins with the Portman Group who refused, though it's interesting that some companies actually have. But I think that they've now...
Isn't that disgraceful that they have? I mean, would you urge government to legislate or go further? I mean, the labelling in other parts of the world is clearer. What we have is really not up to the task.
My personal view is that we should have labelling in line with the evidence-based guidelines we've put out. The Portman Group are well aware of my views. I have written to them on a number of occasions. They started by disputing the evidence and thinking that I didn't know how to read scientific evidence. Then they moved to negativity. I believe that they are now looking at how they can help, because they've realised if they don't, that there will be more action. So you and I are in the same place on this.
But can I just press you again? Pubs, restaurants, supermarkets, you go and there's no labelling. There are plenty of non-alcoholic, sort of alternatives at pubs clubs and restaurants and so on can sell and make money from that are actually very nice to drink. So isn't it rather underwhelming that they simply don't get it? And if they actually genuinely cared about their customers and the future of the communities that they are operating in, shouldn't they be doing more in this area?
I'd love to see them do more, but there's a limit to how often I'll play chief nanny. So please, will you do it? I absolutely agree. But the problem is, of course, that labelling and labelling on the actual bottles and containers does have a bit of an impact, or we wouldn't be so keen to have it. But a poster up, the evidence is it has an immediate impact but then wears off. So what we really need to find are what are the nudges to impact this so that people change their way of life while pregnant. And that takes quite a lot of effort. I mean, we probably need things like EastEnders and Casualty to have episodes which bring this out, because then you get it internalised by the public. At the moment, what we're grappling with is that it's not internalised by the public.
Right. So just sort of finally, we've got the prevention green paper being worked on at the moment. What would you like to see in that green paper in this area, given that, as I say, just to repeat, the 2015 study showed 3/4 of women still drinking in pregnancy, a third at binge levels?
So we need some work about what are the nudges and how do you get change a population, and I'll have to go and think about that.
Could you write perhaps back to the committee once you've thought? Because I think it would be helpful. You say you don't want to be chief nanny, but you are a very influential and powerful figure as chief medical officer. It would actually be helpful to us to have some clear thoughts from you, which we could then use when we engage with the Portman Group and the British Retail Consortium and the British Beer and Pub Association.
I am so snowed under trying to do the obesity review. What I prefer is to think about it and then could we have a coffee and rather than be on the record but tell you I'll have a look at it, but I'm trying to deliver before I demit.
I will take you up on that. Thank you.
Thank you.